All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carla Thompson, Vice President for Program Strategy at the WK Kellogg Foundation, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today at the Google Hangout. Our discussion is going to focus on the supportive role of fathers in breastfeeding. And so, as many of you know, the Kellogg Foundation believes that all children should have the opportunity to thrive, and all children deserve a healthy start in life. We believe that children's health is improved by ensuring that babies have the benefits of breastfeeding or the first food experience being mother's breast milk. We support a broad approach to breastfeeding and accelerating the cultural shift on the acceptance of breastfeeding and recognizing the benefits of breastfeeding to children and their families. Our approach is very community-based focused, so we work with a number of community organizations as they work to build advocates and supporters and champions of first food. Pregnancy, as we all know in the early days, is extremely wonderful, but it's also very overwhelming. And new moms need a lot of support. And so today we want to talk about the critical roles that dads play in supporting moms who are breastfeeding and the ways in which they can continue to support mothers and babies through the breastfeeding experience. Today we have a number of panelists who are going to be joining us, but due to technical difficulties, we only have one on board right now. And Samuel Nunez is a national expert that's recognized in the field of youth development and responsible fatherhood. He joins us as the Executive Director of Fathers and Families of San Joaquin. And he's going to talk to us today around the ways in which his work is supporting fathers in the breastfeeding movement. As many of you know, we're using technology, and so we're encouraging everyone who has a Twitter account to really talk about this conversation today by using hashtag supportive dads. And we'd like to see as much of the Twitter conversation going forward. We will have an opportunity for Q&A. We're going to have some panel discussions and moderated discussions for the first half an hour, and then we're going to open it up for audience questions. So if you have questions, please send them forward. You can send them either through Twitter or by sending them through the Q&A portion of this Google Hangout. So I'm going to start off the conversations with Samuel. And today I'd like, Samuel, for you to talk to us around why you feel father support in breastfeeding is so critical to success.
Well, I think, first of all, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Carla, for inviting me onto this very important conversation. It's just that, I think fatherhood development, we're talking not just about, engaging fathers. We're talking about healthier outcomes for children and families. We're talking about changing the current trajectory of a lot of our families that have, frankly, have experienced low, a variety of different struggles and conditions that affect their health and overall vitality and affects their quality of life. So I think it's extremely an imperative that we engage fathers in supporting and promoting breastfeeding. Frankly, the studies and the statistics and findings show that once a father is engaged, we can actually have a more robust and facilitate better outcomes for breastfeeding and other things that are of vital interest to promoting better health outcomes for families that have not necessarily received the same information. So, the data tells the story. It suggests that the more that we are able to successfully engage fathers in the promotion of breastfeeding, the more that they can play a role in supporting that, the more that they're not only going to, moms are going to breastfeed, but the more that they're going to sustain that. I think it's important to recognize too that women parent from a different place than fathers at times, right? And it's very important that fathers be welcomed into something so sacred, something so beautiful. This is called, first food, right? There's nothing more sacred than the food and what we're putting into our body. So I think it's not just a thing around promoting better health. It's a sacred, it's almost a spiritual act, right? And it's so I think it's really important that that we recognize the data that supports it, but that we also recognize the opportunity to increase a bonding and relationship between families. This helps facilitate stronger families at the end of the day too. So I feel as though there's indisputable truth behind the fact that the more that fathers are involved, the better outcomes for family, children, and ultimately communities are going to occur as a result of that.
Great, Samuel. Thank you so much. So can you talk to me about what do you see as some of the bigger barriers for fathers in supporting and showing their support for breastfeeding, particularly where you are in San Joaquin?
Well, I think that it's safe to say, in particular with San Joaquin County has it's a very much what's considered a minority majority community. So we have a very large, community of color here, and I think at times there are social conditions that act as barriers. When we know that African Americans and Hispanics are found to have the highest rates of unemployment, people are just trying to survive, right? When we know that the Hispanics have the lowest income levels in the county compared to other racial ethnic groups, or that 94% of males living in poverty were in San Joaquin County, we're living in poverty with males, then we start recognizing that there's people are just trying to survive. At the same time, I think there's some misinformation, I think, at times that our men receive. I don't think they have access to the necessary information to make wiser decisions. I think fear plays a huge role in preventing the promotion of breastfeeding insecurity among men, right? These are not things that have necessarily been, men are not involved in these conversations early enough and long enough to actually understand the implications. Now, on the flip side of that, the barrier can be a bridge. I think the more that we actually involve and engage men in these kinds of real critical conversations, the more that fear is kind of eradicated, and we're able to actually see that fathers want to play a vital role. Fathers want to be involved, but it's just really about how we invite them. I think that obviously some of the main champions, which we work very closely with here in this county, our local San Joaquin County WIC programs and other programs that are promoting this, have recognized this and have reached out deliberately. I've presented at a number of breastfeeding coalition conferences and have brought fathers from the community, many of them who are in reentry, many of them who are now just coming back in after serving, some kind of a sentence, incarcerated or had other barriers. So there's a lot of barriers that in general that are affecting the health and the health outcomes for our men. And I think those become barriers in them actually being involved and engaged participants in promoting breastfeeding. But again, the fact is that once we invite them and once we start having these conversations, we recognize that men do want to be involved, that they are part of the equation. We recently had the experience of going down to the All-American City in Denver, Colorado, and we did a spoken word piece. And many of these young men and older men were actually, again, system-involved youth. We had kids in the CPS system and fathers that were returning family members. And one of the things that was very compelling to me was one of the young men said, "Society, please tell me how to create an identity when half of it is missing." So when they're not having these conversations, when they're not having kind of reflections of what, are ways that men and fathers can engage and be involved, and the information regarding the health benefits, right? Because Similac is similar but lacking, right? There's a reason why it's called Similac, and it's important that we recognize the nutrients and the nutritional value of these of promoting breastfeeding all the way around. Go ahead.
So you talked a bit about the bridge in thinking about the barriers and the opportunities. Can you talk to us a little bit more about some of the opportunities that you're pursuing through your work to get fathers involved and the sort of reception that you're receiving from the community as you're doing this hard work?
I'll tell you right now, our greatest allies in doing this work are the greatest. Actually, they're even running the movement to a certain degree. In large part, is moms and women. Right, moms and women are the ones that are actually helping connect us with men in the community and boys and young men and young fathers. And so we're starting to see that the more that folks start recognizing, and frankly, even when we started our agency, a lot of young people came to us, and many of them even young fathers, and said, "I never had one of those in my life. I want to be a good father. How can I be a good father? How can I actually be effective in my role as a father?" There's this sacred moment when fatherhood just when the role of fatherhood first occurs, that folks are very vulnerable, very susceptible to positive messaging. We find that as a really the perfect time to actually promote positive messages like this. And so not only that, but we're also working in a systemic way, right? And working with systems that have in large part recognize that they've been very good at serving women and moms, but not as effective at working with fathers, and they're partnering up. We have a very strong collaborative partnership, like I said before, with our local WIC programs. We are actually discussing ways that we can be more involved in their WIC centers at high volume times to really engage men and fathers, because it's not just about creating an environment there where posters say we love fathers too, but it's actually about seeing other fathers involved and engaged in these conversations that begins to normalize this. These are conversations that haven't been normalized in a lot of our communities, and we need to actually normalize these conversations and make it part of the actual discourse, make this part of the broader narrative in terms of how we can better support our children. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about supporting our children, and we want the best for our kids. They're sacred, and we need to be able to be a part of that. So through these partnerships, we're able to see new pathways and new kind of strengthen relationships. We are now in conversations with our local WIC to actually be at each one of their sites. They serve a lot of families. Families include fathers. And so they're actually inviting us into their spaces that were historically reserved for women, and saying, come on in and facilitate programs in here, facilitate kind of conversations, have your healing circles in here. And not only that, but also we've taken fathers to the conferences. We took a large contingency of fathers to the San Joaquin County conference. We took the larger statewide breastfeeding conference as well. We took a large contingency from our community. And I couldn't tell you how excited the fathers were just to be part of this. I mean, they were excited, they were enthused, they were deep too. They got deep about what their barriers were individually. Each one of them had experienced some barrier, some challenge. But the beautiful part was that they were actually rolling up their sleeves saying, let's partner up and let's find out ways that we can do this for our children. And frankly, we were well received by the actual conference participants. And actually, it just, feeling welcome, feeling accepted, feeling invited. All these are just really important, right? The acknowledgement. I think that's the most important thing. Acknowledging that fathers do matter, that we want them involved, is the first clear step. Secondly, we also, as folks that work in this field, need to commit to changing certain behaviors and activities that are oftentimes, sometimes without really even being intentional, creates similar barriers. So I think through this exchange with partners that have been involved in this movement for a long time, and this is it. To me, this is about a broader movement. We want better health outcomes for our community. This is a significant part in crafting better health outcomes. So it requires a larger, broader movement in our society. And we're starting to see these kind of things be connected. We're connecting the dots and seeing how we can actually integrate our strategies. We're very good at outreaching to dads and young men. WIC is very good at doing what they do. Now, when we combine our efforts, we're starting to see maximum results and impacts in our community. And more men that had not been involved in these kinds of conversations are now becoming part of this narrative. And they're taking it out to their communities. They're kind of creating these kind of conversations at home, in the neighborhoods they live in the parks that they live in. So this starts to become part of a larger social movement.
So I'm glad you touched on the larger social movement, because one of the questions I have for you is, you've been so successful in San Joaquin. Do you have any guidance or recommendations for those who are trying to build the same sort of network and strong advocacy movement in other communities? But then also, do you have suggestions for what should happen so that we really have a nationwide movement focusing on the importance of having dads as active participants in the first food movement?
I think number one, in terms of, thank you for that. I think we've been, number one, this is a culmination of years and years of work. And I frankly, I know we're at a good place in our society, in our nation, when we're actually having this kind of conversation and involving, talking about breastfeeding, we're talking about fathers at the same time. I think that's just amazing. So I think that's part of it. I think it's about really broadening the narrative. I think it's about sharing philosophy, maybe an exchange between communities in terms of what works in promoting breastfeeding among fathers and men. I think that, there is something to be said about folks that have actually been there, done that, and have been doing the work for quite a while. This didn't happen overnight with our success. This is, like I said, years and years and years of struggle and really kind of rooting ourselves and finding out the best strategies, evidence-based practices, and other ways, and kind of really creating a framework. And so a shared framework, a shared philosophy goes a long way. And also an exchange between communities. We have an exchange with a variety of different communities in our region. We see this as we're not just a city within a county. We're a county within a region, and we're a region within a state, and we're a state within a nation. So for us, it's very important that we use this kind of technology also to try to promote this. Even though I'm not a very technical person, I felt it was like an imperative that we start getting the message out there. So we start countering the message that is prevalent in our society, because that still abounds. Misinformation and half truths still abound. So the more that we can get not only the philosophical and frameworks together and shared, but also trying to counter messaging that really is prohibitive from men participating in this is really significant. I think by the Kellogg Foundation, kudos to you for seeing this as a significant issue that needs to be addressed and promoted broadly. I think that the more that we can actually create these kind of integrated strategies, the more that we can collaborate and kind of blend medicine, right, and strategies, the more effective we would be in the long term to actually increase breastfeeding in our community, and at the same time normalizing this and reaching populations that had historically been uninvolved or not invited to the table. As it's often said, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. And I think men and fathers have seen themselves on the menu but not invited to the table, and now we feel as though we have some parity, we have some support, and we're taking full advantage of it. Anytime that we're asked from a breastfeeding coalition or group to present, we're there, and that's about men showing up too. That's it. It's not just about the invitation, but it's about showing up and following through. So we're enthused and we're ecstatic that we're part of this broader movement.
Great, thank you. So one last question for me before I turn it over to the audience, and I'm sorry that I'm showing up dark, but the sun is going in and out behind me. But my last question for you, Samuel, is what advice would you give to soon-to-be a new fathers about breastfeeding? And what do you think they need to know in order to be successful?
Well, first of all, I will congratulate him and welcome him into the new, now he belongs to a very, the best group I can consider, which is the group of fatherhood, right? Welcome to the group, welcome to the family. And then I would actually sit down and just kind of listen to him and speak with him about some of the things that I found in my own journey towards fatherhood. One of the things that we have to recognize is that at times they disassociate manhood and fatherhood. So we get some messages about manhood that are in direct contradiction to what we want to be as fathers. I've never met a father that didn't want to be the best father he could potentially be. At times, not even having a formative relationship with their own father in their formative years doesn't prevent them. You can give what you never got. And frankly, I find it very, I find myself to be in conversations where it's very important that we kind of connect the two hoods, right? Fatherhood and manhood, and say some of the messages we received have direct or are a barrier for us to be effective as fathers. In other words, if you want to be a better father, we got to learn how to be better men. And so understanding how to honor women, respecting elders, and protecting children, that is a philosophy that many of our fathers, when they first take on the role, are really committed to. But I think it also requires a deep and long-term relationship, a mentoring relationship that needs to happen, because there are times where at times our fathers feel as though they have to have all the answers because society has told them, you need to have all the answers, you're a dad now. That's not true. I still call my mom and ask her, Mom, what do I do in this situation? Or I have mentors in my life that I call upon, and I think they need to know that it's okay not to have all the answers. The biggest thing we need to deal with is the fear that has kept our communities from living their full potential, and family members from living their full potential. And so the only way we can heal that is through relationships, through harmonious relationships with our young fathers, where we understand and we provide a space for them. We also need to recognize, because they are young fathers, that they're still on that bridge towards adulthood. Even though they're fathers, we still have to help them, guide them, counsel them over this rite of passage into being, what does this new role mean in relationship to your role within your community? And I think that's an extremely important role, especially when we're talking about men of color. When we're talking about people of color, we have kind of an indigenous rite of passage. We have a rite of passage that we need to explore. We need to reroot ourselves in. And once we reroot ourselves, as it's been said, you know, if you don't have a deep root, you're not going to have good fruit, right? So we need to have deep roots, and we need to understand where we come from. We need to understand the values of where we come from. These are they come from kings and queens. These kids, these young fathers, and we need to remind them of that, and we need to be reflective examples to them. We need to show up for them and say, this is the way a man walks, talks, and conducts himself. And a father is loving, is gentle, is compassionate, is brave, and he's honest, right? And so how do we draw that out? By showing them an example first.
Well, thank you so much, Samuel. You tapped into some really key concepts that we want to leave with our viewers. In addition, I want to remind everyone that if you're interested in asking Samuel any questions, feel free to tweet your questions to #SupportiveDads. We have one question that's come through the pipeline. And so, Samuel, our audience from Giving Strong would like to know, has a question for you. Would you say sons of supportive dads become supportive fathers later in life?
I'm sorry, sons of supportive dads
would they become supportive fathers later in life?
I think absolutely. I think that sons of supportive dads that honor their fathers and honor their relationships in all aspects are definitely better equipped and qualified to be better fathers themselves. I think we cannot negate who we are. This is part of our identity, good, bad, or ugly. Even if our fathers haven't been always there, you know, and it's still about honoring them. It's about honoring our relationships, right? And I believe that they would be, if they have a good example, a positive example. And see, we hardly hear these stories, though, do we? We hear the other side of the spectrum where fathers haven't been showing up or they haven't been as engaged. But we don't hear about those everyday fathers that are actually showing up, showing out at the schools, in their WIC appointments, promoting breastfeeding, promoting other health, better health activities and behaviors. And as a result, you know, we end up hearing half of the narrative. So I think the more that we have sons and brothers, and that would help us. And actually, fathers need to know that they're needed. Bottom line, I mean, as a father, I heard the messages that you don't matter. You did your job. Now it's mine. You know, these are the messages that we're getting in our neighborhood sometimes. And it's important to recognize that fathers are needed, they're valued, and they're also precious to the family unit. And so I think by sons actually celebrating their dads, we're on the, you know, here we are, the weekend before Father's Day. We have a Father of the Year award ceremony. I've had the honor of reading all these nominations, and it brings a tear to your eye, you know, to see that there's reconciliation happening, that there's reconnection and reunification. I see it here in our center. We're a family reunification center. We work with CPS and probation department. All of our families are involved in multiple systems at a time. And to see the fathers engaged in activities and promoting physical play and reading to their children, I can't see anything more honorable, more sacred, or more beautiful to be a part of. So I think the more that we celebrate that, the more that children honor their fathers and actually, you know, kind of encourage them. It's been said, and I don't know what the studies are now, but I heard a rumor at one point that Hallmark actually loses money on Father's Day. Can you believe that? That they actually lose money on Father's Day? I think, you know, and this happens everywhere, right? I was just having a conversation. I have to go to the chiropractor. And the father was talking to me. He's asking me what I did. And I told him, I'm very proudly, I work with fathers and families of San Joaquin. He goes, hey, brother, he goes, I think my son's going to visit me. I haven't seen him in 7 years. You should have saw the tear in his eye. Big, burly man, tough guy, got emotional. His spirit, I could feel it. His heart was growing big, and it made my heart grow big. And I just found that to be so beautiful that in this doctor's office, getting some adjustments in our back, that we're sitting there talking about fatherhood. And he goes, I just hope he comes and sees me, because I know he has a reason not to, because I told him I was going to go see him and I never did. And now he's going to come and see me. And I said, you know what, brother, the future can heal the past. Your son wants healing too. You need to heal that relationship. So the more that our sons acknowledge their fathers and embrace their fathers, I think it's good for the sons. And I think it's definitely good for dads to be forgiven and reconciled when they haven't always been the best fathers also. Not just when they're good dads, but also when they haven't been the best dads, because we don't know their struggle. We don't know the generations of pain, suffering, discrimination, disparate treatment, what the trauma they've experienced has gone unchecked, gone unhealed, and as a result, it shows up in all of our sacred relationships. But I've never, and I've worked in some crazy places, but I've never met a father that didn't want the best for his children. Never.
Great. Thank you so much, Samuel.
Thank you, Carla.
As we wrap up and we're winding down, so we've answered all of the questions that we received so far. Sam, I want to offer you an opportunity for any last words of encouragement to dads as they're supporting moms and young children with first food. And then if you have any last messages around the work that you're doing and where you see your work going moving forward, that would be great.
First of all, I'm very encouraged to be a part of this Google Hangout. It's the first time I ever hung out like this, so I like these kinds of hangouts, and I'm hoping that some things I said made sense to folks, that I'm able to, because there's so many men that I look up to in my community and in my travels that are just such wonderful examples of good fathering. And I'm just really ecstatic to be part of this club, if you will, right? And in terms of our work here in San Joaquin County and Stockton in particular, we just came back with the All-American City Award. And what's interesting about that is that even though Stockton has had its share of struggles and they've made national headlines, we've lived these headlines out locally. And the people that actually we took down there were young men and fathers and a lot of partnering agencies along with moms and sisters as well. But a lot of these men had never been involved in anything like this, in any kind of a movement. Actually, as a matter of fact, they've been, kind of cast aside at times. And I feel like it's important to recognize the moment in time we have right now to create this movement that is going to help shape future generations. What we do in our lifetime, and we only got one, what we do is going to affect 7 generations of our family. And I think that it's significant to know that, number one, we can heal, that we can deal and still keep it real and still move forward. And actually, I think to me, a true man is defined by how gentle, how compassionate, how honest, and how much he, cares for his family. We have obligations to not only ourselves, but to our families and our communities. And I'm starting to see this movement start picking up pace. And I'm just really encouraged to be a part of it. And where we're going is, I think we're just barely, we haven't plateaued yet at all. Actually, this is still happening as we all around us. Look around you. There's just so much to celebrate right now. Despite the obvious struggle that still exists, there's so much to be happy about, right? And I recognize that there is a change happening. There's a change happening in our society, and we need to be a part of it. And we need to help facilitate that change. And we have a role in it. And so thank you, Carla, for the invitation. Thank you for all your work there at Kellogg. And I look forward to the next time we can hang out.
All right. Thank you, Samuel. And thank you so much for talking about the importance of father support in the breastfeeding movement and talking about how dads, particularly dads in San Joaquin, are involved in supporting mothers and children there. Again, I want to encourage everyone to keep the conversation going all week. So we're going to continue to feed information on the Twitter hashtags supportive dad. So we invite you all to provide comment, feedback, good stories, challenges, opportunities. We really want to hear from you around how we can have this movement of dads being involved in first food grow over the years. In addition, I want to give a special happy Father's Day to all the dads who joined us on this Google Hangout today. We're really happy to have you here, and we hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you to everyone who participated, and we look forward to keeping the conversation going. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Happy Father's Day. Bye, Carla.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.